About 3.5 years ago, Apple dropped the iPhone 13 Pro Max, a device many considered to be their magnum opus. And yes, I learned a new word. It was a phone that finally got everything right. A stellar battery life, a proper 120Hz display, top cameras, and amazing performance. But does it still hold up in 2025 when you can grab a refurbished unit for around 450 USD? That's less than half of its original $1,100 price tag, and honestly, it's starting to look pretty interesting. Sure, newer iPhones pack more processing power and sharper cameras, but they're also asking for a lot more of your money. And at 450 USD, we're talking about flagship features at mid-range prices, which changes the entire conversation. Let's break it down and see if it's worth your money. One of the biggest reasons to consider it in 2025 is the price. As I just said, the price has dropped by more than half, yet its features still feel premium today. We're talking about our 120Hz ProMotion display, stellar battery life, and a top build quality. At this price point, new phones are cutting corners somewhere. Plastic builds, mediocre cameras, or even bad performance. Pretty sure it beats all new phones currently released at the same price point in many categories. Even after 3 years, the iPhone 13 Pro Max still delivers top-tier performance. It is powered by the A15 Bionic chip, which was way ahead of its time when launched, and even today, it holds up against newer processors. It's not as powerful as the newest flagship chipsets, but nobody is doing quantum computing on their phones. We are scrolling Instagram, playing Code Mobile, and jumping between 20 different apps, and the 13 Pro Max handles all of that without breaking a sweat. The 6GB of RAM might seem small by 2025 standards, where some Android phones are packing 16 or even 24GB, but Apple's memory management is just different. You can throw any current app or game at this phone and it just works. No status, no lag, no let me think about that for a second moments. Just smooth, consistent performance that makes you forget you're using a 3-year-old device. The cameras on the iPhone 13 Pro Max were one of its biggest selling points when it launched, and even in 2025, they hold up remarkably well. It features a quad 12-megapixel camera system consisting of a main sensor, an ultra-wide lens, a telephoto lens, and a front-facing selfie camera, all of which deliver consistently great results. I mean, sure, the iPhone 16 Pro Max can probably capture individual atoms at this point, but here's the thing, the 13 Pro Max still nails the fundamentals. Your main shooter, ultra-wide, and telephoto combo deliver consistently good results whether you're shooting your kid's birthday party or creating content for the gram. The photo quality is what I'd call reliably excellent. Colors are natural, dynamic range is solid, and detail retention is still impressive even by 2025 standards. For most people, and I mean literally 95% of users, the camera differences between this and newer iPhones doesn't matter at all. When this phone launched, it had the best battery life of any iPhone at the time, and unsurprisingly, it has aged incredibly well. It's still putting up respectable numbers. We're looking at about 6 hours of screen time for average users, which honestly isn't bad for a phone pushing 4 years old. You see, all the top phones in 2025 have reached some sort of peak in most stuff. We get excellent cameras and don't need more, we got amazing displays and don't need more, build quality is up there, there's basically no app that they can't run as they're extremely powerful, but the only thing that there is no peak is battery life, especially if you're a heavy user. You'll always have to charge your phone at least twice a day. So despite this phone showing its age, the gap isn't that dramatic as you think. Now let's talk build quality. The 13 Pro Max is built like a tank. Stainless steel frame, ceramic shield glass, IP68 rating, pretty much everything you'd expect from a flagship, and honestly, it still feels more premium than most mid-range phones in 2025. The stainless steel might pick up fingerprints like it's collecting them for evidence, but it gives the phone this substantial feel that screams quality. Beyond the durability, the design still looks stunning. The phone has a timeless aesthetic that feels as premium in 2025 as it did in 2021. Now software updates. This is where Apple used to flex on everyone else, at least until Google and Samsung also started introducing longer updates a year ago. So basically Apple can still flex since it's the only phone from 2021 that will go for the long run. We're talking about at least 3 more years of guaranteed updates. So you're not missing out on the latest features. Even if Apple introduces new software capabilities with newer models, many of those features will still come to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The phone remains secure, fast, and packed with the latest iOS improvements, ensuring that it won't feel outdated anytime soon. The display on the iPhone 13 Pro Max was one of its biggest upgrades when it launched, and even in 2025, it remains a fantastic screen. Unlike previous iPhones, this was the first model to introduce a 120Hz refresh rate, making animations, scrolling, and gaming feel incredibly smooth. Once you get used to this level of fluidity, it's hard to go back to a standard 60Hz display. The OLED panel is doing some heavy lifting here. Those deep blacks and punchy colors hold up, and with Dolby Vision and HDR10 support, watching content to this thing is a treat. You get a cinema-like experience right in your hands, perfect for watching high-quality content on YouTube and Netflix. And yes, modern phones can hit 4500 plus nits of brightness, but let's be real, the 1200 nits on the 13 Pro Max is still plenty bright. Unless you're trying to use your phone as a flashlight signal for passing aircraft, I think you're good. Now, still on the display, one potential reason you might not want to get the phone in 2025 is the notch. At the time of its release, the notch was necessary to house Face ID sensors and the front camera, but since then Apple has moved on to the dynamic island on newer iPhones. For most people, the notch isn't a big deal. After all, you get used to it pretty quickly. But if you've been using a newer iPhone with the dynamic island, switching back to the iPhone 13 Pro Max might feel like a step backward. The dynamic island not only looks better, but also adds extra functionality, making the notch feel a bit outdated by comparison. That said, if your Samsung really doesn't mind the notch, it shouldn't be a deal breaker. The phone still offers an incredible viewing experience, and the notch doesn't affect performance or usability in any way. But if you're after the latest looks, it is something to consider before making a purchase. Another downside of the phone is the Lightning port. Apple has finally made the switch to USB-C on newer iPhones, and for good reason. USB-C is faster, more efficient, and more universal. Almost every modern device, from laptops to Android phones, tablets, and even accessories like headphones and gaming controllers, now use USB-C. That means you can charge all your devices with one single cable, which is very convenient. With the Lightning port, you still need to carry an extra cable for your iPhone, which might be a small hassle, especially if you already own newer USB-C Apple devices like a MacBook or an iPad. That said, if you're coming from an older iPhone that also has a Lightning port, this won't be a big issue. While USB-C is clearly the better standard, the Lightning port isn't a deal breaker, it's just slightly outdated. But here's where we land on the iPhone 13 Pro Max in big 2025. For $450 you're getting a phone that still punches way above its weight class. The A15 chip isn't breaking any benchmark records anymore, but is still crashing daily tasks without breaking a sweat. That 120Hz display is still smooth as butter, and the cameras, they're still solid performers that will make your Instagram food pics look better than they probably should. The notch and Lightning port are still there, but they are minor annoyances in what's otherwise a really solid package. Personally, I still think the iPhone 13 Pro Max was the best iPhone ever made, and even though I'm more of an Android guy, this phone is easily in my top 3 phones of all time. It's just that good. So, if you're on a budget but still want a high-end phone experience, or if you just want a solid, powerful phone without paying for the latest flagship, the 13 Pro Max might be one of the smartest phone purchases you can make. Thanks for watching. I'm Milan and this is Fuzzy Tech. Subscribe.